it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sherman Boates. Sherman for as long as I've been at Acadia. And this summer I saw, actually Pia, my wife, saw Facebook posts that he was in the Arctic. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that looks interesting. And I thought, I'm going to ask Sherman to come and give a presentation. So here he is. That's Sherman.
Can you see my, yeah, you can see the, I don't have many pictures of the ship, so I'll just show you. This is the part back here. This is a rack that holds about 12 Zodiacs that hold 10 passengers, an expert like myself, and a and a driver. So you're in small groups going around doing all kinds of cool stuff. Excuse me. I have a little tea over here if I can find it. So there's a whole bunch of different ships you can go on, trips, I mean, you can go on Adventure Canada website and look at them all. They're all about 13, 14 days long. These are the two main Arctic ones that I've taken. This one starting in Iqaluit and going to Greenland eventually through the Hudson Strait. This is the other one, the High Arctic Explorer. I've now done this one 3 times. It's different every time because this, of course, is the Davis Strait, Baffin Bay, and there's a lot of sea ice here in the summer. So where you go, you don't always go straight across like that. This could be all packed out with sea ice. So in one year, we went up the coast all the way up to here and then across. So every trip is different. So this is just the general route. There's sort of 3 main things we do. We cruise at sea and look for stuff. We go into Inuit communities and have encounters with them. There's good relationships between the company and them, and we have all kinds of interesting events, cultural events. But most of the things that I'm interested in are going to very wild places and looking at the natural history. So that's what we'll sort of focus on. Someone I heard say, when do I go? I've been as early as middle of July to the end of August. So the trips vary year to year. So I have like 2 jobs on ship. I'm hired as a conservation biologist because of all the work I've done over the years. I give, like when we're at sea, we have like prepared presentations, lectures. So I'll lecture to 170 people or so. And these are the kinds of things that I talk about in a sort of a formal setting. But right from very early in the morning when we're eating meals, right till the end of the day, I'm talking Arctic ecology, Arctic natural history, Arctic biology with people. So it's quite demanding. It's not it's a job. It pays a fee per day, but you're really working. You don't have a lot of time to yourself. You're basically working the whole time. So this is a picture of me this summer in northern Baffin Island again. And you can see I'm just looking at my floor of Greenland, brushing up on my plants because you can see Zodiacs are coming ashore and these little blue coats are all passengers. So basically we go on shore first, get sort of set up, look around. Sometimes we hike, sometimes we find a station and just stick there for the whole time. Absolutely amazing. So 2 jobs, sort of conservation biologist. Second part is naturalist and talking, like I said, critters all day long. We try to work with the people on board, try and both the staff, but all, obviously the passengers, and improve their natural history knowledge. A lot of people, when they're arriving there, all they want is polar bear and narwhal, right? And they're super cool, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more there. So one of my jobs, and one of the things I've sort of specialized in, is trying to get people to look at the Arctic a little different. Look at some of the critters that they're not paying very much attention to. One of the things I did with a botanist in BC this year on board is we set up a iNaturalist project and did a workshop where we taught passengers how to use their phone to use iNaturalist. And then we collectively worked on a little project. So just on one trip in 12 days, we saw 125 species of critters. And here's just a few examples. So really been happy with that. It's a lot of fun. People really enjoy it, but we collect a lot of interesting records because the places we go to, there just aren't people doing iNaturalist. So there's not just myself on board, there's a bunch of other specialists. There's other scientists. This is Joseph. He's an archaeologist. He was one of the people that found the Erebus a number of years ago, the Franklin ship that was underwater for all those years. So they have like some top-notch people. This is Mark, who works with Natural Resources Canada. He's a world-renowned geologist. So we have geologists, usually a botanist, a marine mammal person, bird person. Birds always get too much attention. There's always 2 or 3 of them. And then we've been convincing them to look at other critters as well, invertebrates and things. I'm not going to really talk about the cultural things. There's a lot of really cool things that we do. And the company has, it's a family-owned company. It has Inuit people that are on the management of the company and work with the company all the time. So it's a very interesting company from that point of view. This is actually Beachy Island, where Franklin didn't end up, but the people that were looking for him went there and built a house in case Franklin was still alive and they got there and all that kind of thing. Very bleak place, very cool, highly regulated. You have to get permits. You have to have an archaeologist with you and all that kind of stuff. And there's some nice Arctic poppies here growing in this desolate beachy island setting. So this is just my Pixel 8, remember. This is my friend Linda. She's an Inuit cultural educator on board. So there's some science-y types. There is at least an equal number, if not more, of cultural educators who have all kinds of different programming, both on the ship and on shore. Here she's on the ship doing a drumming event for people. This shows you sort of the zodiac situation. Every day they come down off the top of the ship and we go ashore and we do stuff. And then at the end of the day, we come back. This is Binya, my new friend from Greenland. He's a 23-year-old helicopter mechanic from Nuuk, Greenland. And this is a cool thing that young people, if you have children or grandkids or whatever, they hire a lot of young people to drive Zodiacs and to be bear guards and stuff like that. So it's a very cool place to meet interesting young people. Here's a few of the people here. Here's John, our expedition leader. He's in charge of all the places we go ashore and all the things we do. And this is just Brenna. She's a company employee who drives a Zodiac. This is what it looked like on the ship going across Davis Strait. You know, ivory gulls, seals, bowhead whale, all kinds of interesting sightings. It's great. You're just cruising along at about 12 knots, hour after hour. Very cool. Here's a look at the top deck. Spend a lot of time on the top deck scanning for wildlife all the time. This is just a look at the side of the ship, and this is how we load people into the Zodiacs. And very effective way of getting around. And it's really cool because people get a sense of being in a small group as opposed to being a great big bunch. So it's very cool. So this is sort of my job, was to get people who, you know, are looking for polar bears and narwhals to get down and actually look at what is the interesting small life, the biodiversity that's the basis of the food chain here. So here we have some people, they're actually photographing, I'll show you a picture in a minute, of a Polaris fritillary, an Arctic butterfly. And they all have the great camera gear, so it's really fun to try and twist their point of view a little bit and get them looking at things. And people got quite excited about it. I had the opportunity this year, this is Charlene, my partner. She got to go with me this year, so we had a really interesting time. Just as a sidebar, I haven't been really very much involved with Belonging to Naturalist in recent years. I wasn't really invited that much when I was in government. They thought I was the enemy. But in the 80s and the early 90s, I was very much involved. I was on the board of directors. I chaired the program committee for a couple of years. And I was on the committee that did the first advocacy program for the society, which was save the Wolffield chimney and build the Roby Tufts Center around that. So my wife is actually, she was a Green Dragon coordinator, which was the first youth nature program that BNS led way back in the 90s. This is my picture of a polar bear with my phone. There's two reasons why it's not very good. One is I'm bouncing around in a Zodiac, but also very, very respectful. We're not allowed to even let the bear know we're there. Like, we're way offshore. You get lots of chances to look with your binoculars, and people with big lenses get all kinds of cool stuff. But, you know, I've seen lots of bears. It's very cool. I love them. They're amazing, but not as interesting to me as some of the other things. My bird photography isn't great either. I'm taking them with my phone. Here's a white-faced gerfalcon that I spent an hour and a half with on Beachy Island last summer. And I was looking at plants, identifying plants, and talking about it. And the whole time there was a gerfalcon moving up and down the ridge. So, you know, even with a little phone, you can get a few bird pictures. So this is more what I got interested in. There are two species of bumblebees in the Arctic, the high Arctic. One is this one called the polar bumblebee. We even had a cocktail of the day one time on the ship was the polar bumblebee. It was a lovely drink. The other species is a cuckoo bumblebee that nests in the nests of this. So this is the first one, Bombus polaris. I've written a long lyric poem about its life cycle. If you're interested, I can make you a copy. This is mouse-eared chickweed. We'll look at a picture of it in a minute. But the insects are very abundant in the Arctic, but it's very hit and miss. You know, you have to have the weather right. You want to be there earlier in the season, not later. But I've had some fantastic days when I've saw some very, very cool things. And, you know, you can tell it's an Arctic bumblebee. It's all nice and fuzzy. Another picture of same species. This plaid is the territorial flower of the Northwest Territories. This is Dryas and tegifolia, the avens. Super cool. If we had more time, this is supposed to be a short look at a lot of pretty pictures, but the life cycle of these Arctic critters is fascinating to me. And you know, they've got to do a whole lot in a little bit of time, and they have absolutely amazing life cycles. And the Arctic bumblebee life cycle is very unique in lots of ways. Can anyone guess what this is? It is a caterpillar. It's an Arctic woolly bear. So you've all seen the black and tan woolly bears going across the road. Well, this is the Arctic version of that. So it's a moth caterpillar. And look at the amazing setae or hair-like structures all over the critter. And what do you think that they're for? Yeah, insulation is part of the story. This organism, when I looked it up, it has the longest life cycle of any butterfly or moth in the entire world. It's in a larval form for 14 years. So it comes out as a larvae and feeds for about a few weeks to a month, then makes a cocoon, stays frozen for the whole rest of the year, comes out again. It does that 14 times before it comes out as an adult and breeds. So it does 90% of their life is frozen and about 5% feeding on the tundra. So this is, and so I was getting freaked out. Like, you can imagine the passengers. I get quite excited about things, and at first they were wondering, but once I started explaining to them how miraculous this stuff was, they got really interested in it, and we started looking around. So this is actually the cocoon of the woolly bear. So it makes its cocoon out of those long, bristly hairs all over its body. And if you look inside here, you can actually see a live caterpillar in there. I have other pictures as well I could show you. While I was looking at this, I saw a parasitic hymenopteron flying around. And this is not my picture. I have a video of it, actually, the ones I saw. But what's happening is this is parasitoid that's going to lay its eggs inside the caterpillar, and then they're going to eat its way out from the inside out, and the parasitoid babies will pop out, and the caterpillar will be dead. So not only are you doing this for 14 years trying to like get enough energy together to breed, you've got these nasty parasitoids looking for you. So the structure of this cocoon is about insulation to a certain extent, but these long hairy structures prevent the parasitoid from sticking its ovipositor down into the cocoon, into the caterpillar. So there's actually some interesting research been done on that, but we're not doing research today. This is not a great picture. This is an Arctic butterfly. It's not uncommon at all, but I've only seen it in this incredibly beat up way, you know, at very harsh weather conditions, even in the summer, winds, that sort of thing. And this is the Polaris fritillary caterpillar. Try to do some intertidal stuff, but it's always hit and miss because you don't know where you're going to land and what things are going to be like. But this is a Hydromedusae I photographed last summer. And it was like, it's a super cool picture. It's a super cool organism. It's quite common in the Arctic, this species. But I was really excited because it got picked as iNaturalist Global Observation of the Day. So that was pretty exciting. So hopefully this will work. I don't know if you've seen these, but we had a wonderful opportunity to look at some Arctic pteropods. Pteropods are largely shellless snails that live pelagically in the ocean. We have them down here in temperate zones and in Arctic zones, but this is a very common Arctic one called the sea butterfly. Now, hopefully, if I push this, so this is just taken with my phone. And you see they have a little shell on the back, but they have those really cool wing-like tissue extensions that they flap and basically fly through the water. And why do you think they have to fly through the water? Well, it turns out that there's another species of pteropod called the sea angel. I'll just play the video here. So that's the sea angel. See all those little black dots in the back? Those are all the small round one. And this pink one, it's gone again. We can play it again. It's only takes a second. But the pink sea angel is specialized and adapted to feed mostly just on these other pteropods. They have a special radula that they use to pull the little shell off the back of the little blue angels, and then they grab a hole and swallow them. So very cool. And these are not rare things in the Arctic ecosystem. There's a big bloom of them in the summer, and they're very important in the food chain. So we'll talk a little bit about birds. We visit a whole bunch of seabird colonies, not a whole bunch, but every year we go to like 3 or 4 seabird colonies, depending on where we are. Again, just like polar bears, we're in zodiacs, way in the water, offshore. There's little, if any, disturbance of these birds. These are thick-billed murres on top of icebergs. This is Prince Leopold Island. You can see our little zodiac down here. These cliffs are like 250 feet high, and there are around 250,000 breeding pairs of thick-billed murres on these cliffs. Here's another look at it. You can't see, the birds are so small. Remember, it's you know, I don't even know if that's a bird. It's absolutely amazing to see that many. There's another picture of thick-billed murres. They're super cool because the young, and they only have one, jumps off the cliff before it can fly, smacks into the water, and then the dad finds the young and stays with the young, and they swim all the way down to like Newfoundland and that sort of thing. Very different life cycle. Very cool. Polar bears wait at the base of those cliffs and walk all day long, waiting for babies to fall down into the lake. Here's another colony of thick-billed murres. This is Akpatuk Island, and I have seen polar bears walking up and down on this beach. But again, you can't even see the birds, but there are literally 150,000 pairs of birds. There's lots of other birds you get to see too. You know, glaucous gulls, black-legged kittiwakes, black guillemots, all kinds of things. We've also seen a lot of dovekies. Dovekies breed in the high Arctic. This is a place in Greenland called Cape York. Very, very cool place. These are a couple of dovekies. Again, taken with my little phone. And this is what the colony in Cape York looks like. This is a scree slope that goes up to a cliff. There are 1 million pairs of dovekies nesting in this colony. So what I want you to look at, what I got really interested in, is whenever you find these big bird colonies, you can see here, you can see that this is an amazing tundra meadow, very rich, all kinds of interesting species here, very rich in vegetation. But if you look at these snow fields that are melting down from the cliffs, can you see the red pinkish tinge to them? So what that is, this is a close-up, again, I took with my phone. This is dovekie poop. So when you have 1 million pairs of dovekies and they're leaving the cliffs and they're pooping close and farther away from the colony, it has a phenomenal nutrient enrichment effect on the tundra. So studies have been done now that show that even muskox are affected by the distribution of these bird colonies because the birds enrich the vegetation grows more around bird colonies, and you can get more muskox within 2 kilometers of a bird colony because of this effect. The other thing that's really interesting to me, and I have a whole other presentation I do on the ship about this, but there is a whole basis, just like there's phytoplankton in the ocean, there are algae that live in snow, sea ice, glaciers, icebergs, and there's this huge microorganism community that is the basis of the food chain, not just in the water, but in the floating ice. So these nutrients in ice also fuel a whole bunch of microbes there. And there's a whole bunch, we could talk about that another time. People are beginning to not just look at how glaciers are melting and how nasty climate change is from that perspective, but they're starting to understand how the subtle foundation of the food web, the algae, are actually being impacted by climate change as well. So no time to get into that, but really important. This is an important statistic here. They did some DNA work and they looked at a whole bunch of Arctic organisms, and they found that 96% of them had this algae that lives in this ice. So there's a genetic trace of that algae. So we're just going to look at some pretty pictures now. I get different jobs. I'm quite a generalist in terms of being a naturalist. I like a lot of different things. Sometimes I'm the bird person, sometimes I'm the plant person, sometimes the marine mammal person. So I'm just going to show you some pretty plant pictures taken with my phone. This is alpine mousewort, sometimes called, oops, go back. Sometimes called mouse ear, because this is the ears here. You see the lovely little mouse ears, all furry. A true Arctic plant. Obviously a chickweed. So we'll just not say much about these. This is one of my favorite Arctic plants. One of the things I got had some fun with a botanist last trip with was arguing about whether there were trees. People talk about the tree line. But what's the difference between a tree and a shrub? It's really just a value judgment. So there are shrubs. This is my thumbnail here. This is least willow. That's a pussy willow. This is a tree. There are trees up there. Don't use value-laden words like shrub. This is a tree. A lovely plant called the alpine bistort. There's many willow species, not just the least one I showed you. This is the true Arctic willow. Who knows how big these stems are? Sometimes they get as big as, your thumb around. It could be 100 years old. Another species called gray leaf willow. Underneath of the leaf is very gray. Here's a wildflower called the alpine rock crest. Arctic catchfly, it's in the campion family. It's called catchfly because it has a sticky stem and flies catch into it. You couldn't have an Arctic slideshow without some cotton grass, Areophorus. This is Schreuzer's cotton grass. It's the prettiest one from my perspective. One big fluffy head making these amazing meadows. Beautiful plant called Pyrola grandifolium, the Arctic wintergreen. I don't know what this carex is, but I just want I try and do the carexes, and I try and do the lichens you'll see in a minute as well. But this is a carex I haven't been able to identify yet. There's an equisetum, a scouring rush there. This is Vaccinium uliginosum, the Arctic blueberry. Beautiful plant I hadn't seen till last year. It's actually in the genus Arnica. So it's like the Arnica that people use as a medicinal plant, but this is the northern Arnica. I think this is the last vascular plant picture. This is Arctic bellheather or white bellheather. Beautiful, beautiful plant. So lichens are really cool, and I can do some of them. A lot of them I can't. They're getting people interested in them. Well, one, they're beautiful. This is the elegant sunburst lichen, this one here. But this is the fringed rock tripe. I don't know if you guys know the rock tripes. They're in the group called the umbilicaria. They have like a belly button cord that sticks them to the rock. And when they get wet, they kind of look like a belly button. These are the ones that the Franklin expedition overate, and looks like they impacted some of their health and maybe even caused the death of a couple of the seamen. So pretty hard up if you're diet of 100% lichens. Just a couple of pretty lichen pictures. I think this is one of the map lichens. This is a map lichen here. You bump into all kinds of cool things. This is a muskox vertebral column. And it looks cool that way. But when I started poking around in it, I found 5 different species of mosses, and this is a carex growing here. Look at this. So any nutrients, whether it's dovekie poop, dead animals, bones, you're going to find that there is a biodiversity response to that in the environment. So the rest of the slides are just landscape shots to give you a sense of, in the zodiac or driving the ship, this is the kind of thing that you wake up to every day. And remember, it's light most of the day and night, so there's a lot of time to look at stuff. You can drive, you get in your Zodiac. Sometimes we go out for 3 or 4 hours and just drive around icebergs. It's like unbelievable. It's like anyone been to Ilulissat in Greenland? There's a couple of people there. Anybody else? It is sort of like the mother lode of icebergs in the northern hemisphere, and I've been there a couple of times. I'll show you something in a minute. This is examples of sea ice. Sometimes you see polar bears. Sometimes walruses are pulled out onto sea ice. I've seen ivory gulls, 2 different bunches of ivory gulls on them. You see lots of different gulls and things on them. Polar bear once in a while. wondering whether I'd go back next year or not, because after you're done a trip, you get kind of tired out, but putting these slides together said, well, definitely going back. More sea ice. Some days, like we're going across the Davis Strait, this is perfectly passable in a ship. So you're just slowly cruising through that. I want to just mention this. I put this one in. You can't really see the scale here, but we went right by here in a Zodiac. This is the glacier coming down from two directions here. And we've seen calving just like you see on TV here. It's rather routine. But there has been, if you only go back the last 3 years, you don't see that much evidence of climate change. But in the last 10 years, people on the ship have seen that this particular glacier has retreated over 2 kilometers up the fjord just in 10 years. The other thing I put this slide in for is because just looking at the mountains, this is Greenland. If you haven't been to Greenland, like I had no idea until 3 years ago when I first went there. It is like, from a wilderness perspective, one of my favorite places now. Just Google Earth it for a while, see the whole ice cap, but then you see these little green bits around the edge, and it's just absolutely amazing. Rich tundra meadow here. You can see there must have been a bird colony over here. There's lots of lichen. So this is a Ilulissat. See the people? These are our passengers here. They have this really cool museum there. Like it's a very important tourist place. There's a sign on the beach that says, "Do not go on this beach. There could be severe tsunamis at any point that could cause your death or severe injury. Do not go on this beach." Because there are these huge icebergs there. The stat that I remember in my head about Ilulissat is that in one day, 34 cubic kilometers of ice break off from the ice sheet every day. 34 cubic kilometers of iceberg hitting the water per day. So this is my last slide. This is Jason Edmonds. He's married to the CEO of the company, but he's basically the main sort of logistics program guy. He's an Inuk from Nain, Labrador. He's won a whole bunch of awards lately for working with young Inuit people to help them find livelihoods that represent their culture and that sort of thing. So he's an absolutely amazing guy. It's been as fun for me to learn the natural history as it has been to meet a lot of the people of the North. And one of the things that they tell us is, down south, when you go back, don't talk about the Inuit. Tell them about the North. Tell them about what's going on with the environment and that sort of thing. Jason has in his hand a piece of ice he's just picked up from a calving glacier, brought it back to the ship, went up to the lounge, chipped off a piece, got some nice Lagavulin 16-year-old, put a nice 30,000-year-old chunk of ice in with no traces of humans, no pollution, nothing. Way before people. Anyways, the Arctic's amazing. I'm still in love with it. I hope you enjoy the slides. And anytime you're welcome to talk to me about anything about natural history or about these trips we take to the North. Thanks very much.
Any questions for Sherman?
Yes, Larry. Totally awesome most of the time, but you can get like sleet and rain, and we tend to go out. If we can go out, we get off the ship, even if it's quite rough and that sort of thing. But safety's first, like, there's very expert people making the call whether we go out. You have to wear layers, but it's very nice. I didn't mind it at all. Anything else? Yes.
I wonder if you could comment on the difference from when you first went there to now.
It was a little hard. That's 49 years, and I don't know what you can remember from 49 years ago. But a lot of it was the same sense of sort of romance with vast landscapes. Like I just felt so amazing, and that's still there. I did see some pollution. There's not as much sort of, you know, beaches we go to aren't covered in fishing gear and rope and all that kind of stuff, but you can, if you look around, you can find bits of stuff. The communities are getting much more sustainable in terms of they're working very hard for changing their sources of power, their management of waste and all that kind of thing. But it's a very hard place to live. Like if you're going to have populations of people and small cities and towns, you know, we make a lot of mess. So anyways, 49 years.
Marty?
When you found the insects,
Yes.
would they be kind of a cluster where there were a bunch of different insects and then no insects around in other places?
It's very hit and miss. The first thing you need is like a productive like alpine meadow or something. So you're kind of looking for a bird colony and then what's around it, that sort of thing. If you hit the weather right, the whole meadow can be alive. It's like, you know, some of those bumblebee shots. There was one day where we saw over 180 bumblebees, and then there weeks went by where we didn't see one. So, you know, yes.
What were the night skies like?
Night skies were good, beautiful, doesn't get totally dark. So that's a problem. There's two problems. One, we're too far north most of the time for the aurora. Yes. So that's the first thing I'd ever thought of at first. But the other thing, it's light most of the time when we're there. So, you know, you do get glimpses of bits, but.
And I'm going in September.
Yeah, you could go in September and October would be much better. And the more southern trip would be much better.
To St. John's.
Oh, cool.
Port.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you should see some good stuff. Yeah, you will.
But the birds will be gone, won't they?
Birds will be pretty well gone. You'll see some on the water and stuff, but not tons.
Any other questions?
Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So you talked about the polar bumblebee drink.
Yes.
How many polar bumblebees went in the drink?
Yeah, there wasn't. It was honey and a twist of lime with some kind of special vodka they had.
Okay.
And I could tell you, there's a bit of a story around the drink as well. I could tell you about because, you know.
Good. Anyways.
Thanks very much. It was
Yeah.
lovely to
Thank
talk
you.
to you.